The creepy man outside my dorm. I don't know what he wants. I guess this is the first time I'm writing this out, but I've been freaking out for days now, and I have no idea what to do. I started college a few weeks ago, and everything was going great until I noticed this guy. At first, I thought he was just some random guy hanging around campus. But then, I started seeing him everywhere. He's tall, middle-aged, kind of scruffy looking, always wearing the same ratty hoodie. Hood pulled over his head like he's trying to hide. At first, I brushed it off. College towns have weird people, right? No big deal. Except, it is a big deal. I keep seeing him, always him. He stands just outside the dorm building. At first, I'd spot him out of the corner of my eye when I'd come back late from class, or when I'd walk back after hanging with friends. He wouldn't say anything, but he'd just stare at me. The other day, I was sitting by the window in the dining hall, eating breakfast, and I saw him again. He was standing outside, across the street, staring right at me. It felt like his eyes were burning a hole through the glass. I felt this weird chill crawl up my spine. I don't know why, but I couldn't even move for a second. Then it got worse. Yesterday, I was walking back from my last class. It was pretty late, maybe around p.m. The campus was quieter than usual, and I was listening to music with my AirPods in. You know that feeling when you just know someone's behind you? I had that. I stopped for a second, took my AirPods out, and turned around. He was there, standing maybe 20 feet behind me, watching me. I'm not going to lie, I panicked. I started walking faster, and so did he. It wasn't a run, but it was enough to make me break out in a cold sweat. I turned the corner to my dorm and ran for the door. When I looked back, he was just standing at the corner, not following anymore. But he just stood there, like he was waiting for me. I haven't told anyone yet, because what am I even supposed to say? Hey, there's a creepy guy following me around? People are just going to think I'm paranoid. But tonight was the worst. I was in my room, trying to finish up some work, when I heard a knock on my door. It was weird because no one really visits me at this hour. I thought maybe it was one of the guys from my floor. When I opened the door, there was no one there, just an empty hallway. But then, I heard it again. A knock. Except this time, it wasn't coming from the hallway. It was coming from my window. I live on the 4th floor. I'm not crazy. I know what I heard. I didn't even want to look, but I couldn't help it. When I slowly turned to my window, I saw a shadow, a silhouette of someone standing just outside the glass, even though there's no way someone could stand there. My heart dropped into my stomach. I didn't even get a good look before I grabbed my phone, locked my door, and hid in the bathroom. I've been sitting in here for over an hour now, just waiting for something to happen. I don't know what to do. Should I tell campus security? What would I even say? They'll probably think I'm losing it. But I know what I saw, and I know that he's watching me. I've been sitting in my bathroom for hours now, trying to get the courage to go back out. I know I need to check the window again, but I'm terrified of what I'll see. My phone battery is almost dead, and I don't even know who to call. It's not like I can call the police and tell them, hey, there's some guy hanging outside my 4th floor window. They'd either laugh at me or tell me it's nothing. But this isn't nothing. I swear, this guy is everywhere I go. He knows where I live, what classes I take, and now, he's trying to get inside. I haven't slept since that night. Every time I close my eyes, I hear that knocking again, like it's in my head now. Every little noise makes me jump, and I can't stop thinking about him. I thought about skipping class, but I don't want him to know he's getting to me. But if I stay in my dorm, that just means I'm here alone. The other day, I went down to the student center, hoping that maybe being around people would make me feel safer. I was sitting at a table, pretending to work on an assignment, when I felt that same cold chill. I looked up, and there he was standing outside, right by the window, looking straight at me. I froze. He didn't move. He didn't smile or wave, just stood there, like he was waiting for something. For a second, I thought I should scream or at least tell someone. But who would believe me? So, I did the only thing I could think of. I ran. I grabbed my stuff and bolted out of the building. I thought maybe if I got off campus for a bit, I could shake him. So I went to a coffee shop a few blocks away. But when I sat down, there he was again. This time, He was sitting in a booth across from me, pretending to read a newspaper, but I knew it was him. I felt his eyes on me from across the room. Even when I tried not to look, I tried to stay calm. I stayed there for an hour, telling myself it was just my imagination. Maybe it wasn't him. Maybe I was overreacting. But when I got up to leave, so did he. He followed me all the way back to campus, staying just far enough behind that it didn't look suspicious, but close enough that I could hear his footsteps. I don't know what he wants. He never says anything, never tries to talk to me. It's like he's waiting for the perfect moment to do something, and I don't want to find out what it is. Last night, I thought I'd finally gotten away from him. I locked all my doors, closed my blinds, and put my headphones in, hoping some music would drown out my anxiety. For a few hours, it worked. I almost convinced myself that I was just being paranoid. But then, around AM, I heard something. It wasn't knocking this time. It was the sound of my doorknob jiggling, like someone was trying to get in. I sat up in bed, heart racing, and listened. The door handle rattled again, more violently this time, like whoever was on the other side was getting frustrated. I couldn't breathe. I knew it was him. I don't know how, but I knew. I grabbed my phone, but before I could even unlock it to call for help, the jiggling stopped. For a few minutes, there was silence. I didn't move. Then, heard it again, that knocking. This time, it was louder, more insistent, like he was angry. It was coming from my window again. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just sat there, shaking, until the sun came up. When I finally opened my blinds, there was nothing there. No sign of him, no handprints on the glass, just an empty campus. But I know he's not gone. He's just waiting for the right moment to come back. I've been thinking about dropping out of school, but I don't want to let him win. Maybe I'm just losing my mind. But this feels so real. It's like he's always watching me, waiting for me to slip up. I can't shake the feeling that it's not just me. He's after that. There's something darker going on here. I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll report him to campus security. Maybe I'll pack up and leave. I don't know anymore. I just hope he doesn't come back tonight. I don't know how much longer I can keep this up. After that night, I couldn't stay in my dorm any longer. I spent the past 2 days crashing on a friend's couch. I didn't tell them the real reason why. I just said I needed a break from campus life. Needed a change of scenery. I didn't want to sound crazy, telling them about the man who seems to be following me everywhere. But even here, I can't escape it. Last night, while I was staying at my friend's apartment, I woke up to the sound of footsteps outside the door. At first, I thought it was just one of the neighbors, maybe someone coming home late. But the steps were too slow, too deliberate. Whoever it was, they were pacing up and down the hallway, stopping every few steps like they were listening for something. I held my breath, praying it wasn't him. My friend was asleep in the other room, and I didn't want to wake them. I just kept listening, hoping the footsteps would go away. But then, they stopped right outside the door. I don't know how long I lay there, frozen. Maybe it was just a minute, or maybe it was hours. But I couldn't move. I didn't even dare to look at the door, afraid I'd see his shadow through the crack. Eventually, the footsteps started up again, and I heard them move away, fading into the distance. I thought I was safe, but when I finally got up the nerve to check the door in the morning, I saw something that made my blood run cold. There was a note, shoved halfway under the door. It was just a single sheet of paper, with 3 words scrawled across it in messy, uneven handwriting. You can't hide. I showed it to my friend, but they just shrugged it off. It's probably just some prank, they said. College kids do weird stuff all the time. But I knew it wasn't a prank. It was him. He's found me again. I don't know what he wants, but it's getting worse. Every time I think I've gotten away, he shows up somewhere else. I don't know how he's tracking me, or why he's doing this, but I can't shake the feeling that he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. I haven't told anyone else about this yet. Part of me thinks maybe I'm imagining it, that maybe I'm just being paranoid, but the fear feels too real to ignore. This morning, I was walking to class, trying to convince myself that it was all just in my head. The campus was crowded, full of people going about their day, and for a moment, I felt a little safer. I thought, there's no way he'd try anything in broad daylight, surrounded by all these people. But then, as I was crossing the quad, I saw him again. He was standing under a tree, just watching me. He didn't try to follow me this time, he didn't need to. He just stood there, staring at me with that same empty expression. I don't know how long I stared back, frozen in place. But when I finally snapped out of it and looked around for help, no one seemed to notice him. It was like I was the only one who could see him. I started to walk faster, trying to lose him in the crowd. But every time I glanced over my shoulder, he was still there, always a few steps behind, always watching. I finally made it to class, practically running through the door. I sat down at the back of the room, hoping that maybe I could lose myself in the lecture and forget about him for a little while. But I couldn't focus. All I could think about was him, wondering where he was, what he was planning. After class, I stayed behind, waiting for everyone else to leave. I didn't want to risk running into him again. But when I finally stepped out of the building, he was nowhere to be seen. I don't know what to do anymore. He's everywhere, and no one else seems to notice. I've thought about going to the police, but what am I supposed to tell them? There's a guy following me around, but he never actually does anything. They'd think I'm losing it, but I'm not. I know, I'm not. I can feel it. He's getting closer, watching my every move, waiting for the right moment to do something. I don't know what it is yet, but I'm afraid I won't find out until it's too late. And now, as I sit here writing this post, there's a knock at my window again. I live on the 4th floor. I'm too scared to look. I couldn't move. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would explode. The knocking at my window came again, slow and deliberate, just like those footsteps outside my friend's apartment door. For a moment, I thought about ignoring it. Maybe it was just my imagination, maybe I was finally cracking under the stress. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. The knocking was real. Summoning every ounce of courage I had left, I forced myself to stand and walk towards the window. My legs felt like they were made of stone, each step heavier than the last. I tried to tell myself it was nothing, that there was no way anyone could be outside my window, 4 stories up. But when I reached the window and peeked through the blinds, my blood ran cold. He was there, hanging onto the ledge, staring straight at me with those dead, unblinking eyes. His face was pressed against the glass, his breath fogging it up as he mouthed something I couldn't hear. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. How was this even possible? Before I could react, the window rattled, as if he was trying to force it open. Panic surged through me. I stumbled back, grabbing my phone with shaking hands. I dialed 911, but as I brought the phone to my ear, the call wouldn't connect. It just beeped, over and over, the screen flashing call failed. I was trapped. Desperate, I grabbed a chair and shoved it against the window, hoping to keep him out. But as I did, his face twisted into a sick, distorted smile. He wasn't even trying to break in, he was toying with me, showing me that no matter what I did, he could get to me anytime he wanted. I ran to the door, ready to bolt out of my room, but something stopped me. It was a voice, faint but clear, coming from the window. I turned around, my heart pounding, and saw him still clinging to the ledge. This time, he was speaking just loud enough for me to hear. "I've been watching you for a long time," he whispered. "You can't hide from me." I felt like I was going to be sick. My legs buckled, and I collapsed onto the floor. I didn't know what to do. Every instinct told me to run, but where could I go? He was everywhere. I couldn't hide from him. Not in my dorm, not at my friend's apartment, not anywhere. Then, as suddenly as he had appeared, he let go of the window and disappeared into the darkness below. I waited, listening for the sound of him hitting the ground, but there was nothing. No thud, no scream, just silence. I stayed like that for what felt like hours, huddled on the floor, too terrified to move. Eventually, I managed to drag myself to the bed, where I curled up under the covers like a child hiding from a nightmare. But the nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. I didn't sleep that night. I kept waiting for him to come back, for the knocking to start again, but it never did. By morning, the sun was shining, and everything seemed normal, as if nothing had happened. But I knew better. I packed up my things and left campus that day. I dropped out of college without a word to anyone, not even my parents. I didn't tell them why I couldn't. How could I explain something like this? They'd think I was crazy. I moved halfway across the country, got a job at some random store, and tried to start over. For a while, it worked. I didn't see him again. I started to convince myself that maybe, just maybe, it was all in my head. But that changed last week. I was walking home from work when I saw him again, standing across the street, watching me with those same dead eyes. He didn't smile this time. He didn't move. He just stood there, like a shadow that had finally caught up with me. I don't know how long I have left. I can't run forever, and I know he's not done with me yet. This will probably be my last post. If something happens to me, maybe someone will read this and believe me. Maybe they'll know what to look out for. If you see him, if you ever see the man with the empty eyes, don't try to run. You can't hide from him. Just like I couldn't.